morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is the Reverend Chloe Breyer. I am Executive Director at the Interfaith Center of New York. I'm an Episcopal priest assisting at a parish in East Harlem called St. Edward the Martyr. And it is a great honor to be here today at this first annual Forum on Faith. And those of you who are hiding behind the pillar, I don't know if you want to come out anywhere, but you're welcome to, or you can stay right where you are. That's fine too. Our topic today is the very optimistic faith-solving social problems. And actually we'll have a time to understand this truth from many different facets. And I will, in a minute, introduce our excellent panel. I want to, before I do that, however, just to say a word about, naming what we all know from having picked up the newspaper at any given day, is that more often than not, what we perceive as the role of faith in social problems is often a problematic one. We gather together in this space with a backdrop of a world that often uses religion as a proxy for conflict or a accelerator of conflict. And we hear too often about the role of faith in aiding systems of oppression, whether they are based on race or gender or sexual orientation. And again, it is the backdrop of our gathering today. So it's a rare and blessed opportunity to look a little bit at the other side of that coin, and that's why we're here. And I would be remiss, I think, in not just starting with a glimpse into the work that the Interfaith Center of New York has been doing since 1997 to really find how faith communities around New York City make the overall civic fabric of our metropolis stronger when we work together to solve common problems. A little bit like one of the speakers just now said, the role that faith plays as a bulwark in some senses in democracy. We found that on a very local scale. And I'm just going to give you one example and then introduce our speakers today. This is the emblem of the Interfaith Center of New York, which has a lot of different faith traditions. There'll be a quiz afterwards on which all those traditions are. We have had the opportunity, especially around the arrival of so many new New Yorkers over the last, 3 years, where we have, and notice how much faith communities have played in welcoming our newest neighbors. And we, as the Interfaith Center, have sought to try to support those faith communities that are doing that work. So, because we have been invited here today by folks, especially from the Church of the Latter-day Saints, I thought I would use this example, because when we were approached by one of the elders in this community to ask, well, how can we help, about 2 years ago? And we said, well, this was a time when a lot of the West African folks who have come, all the way through the Darien Gap, but starting in Senegal as opposed to countries in Latin America, and there was an enormous amount of food insecurity, as many of them were staying in mosques that didn't themselves have a lot of resources. So we said, well, if you want to help, we can help you help. And this is a photograph here of the Bishop's Warehouse in New Jersey, where Church of the Latter-day Saints has an extraordinary collection of dry goods and gave us basically $10,000 worth of food stuffs to be able to help some of the new arrivals in the Bronx, a few of the mosques up there. The only trick was that those buildings, those houses of worship where so many people were collecting, didn't have even the kitchen to be able to cook the dry goods for the hundreds of people who were there, staying overnight or coming and having that be a base of their operations. So it was, as so many conflicts are, they're not so much between traditions as between different sort of structures within the tradition, different polities, different kind of hierarchies, different access to basic things. So we turned, with the help of our board member Sylvie Sun, I think, who is here today, to a temple, Buddhist temple that in the South Bronx that had just installed a amazing, industrial-sized kitchen. And they were thrilled to actually take the dry goods and turn them into meals. And that was what you can see in the middle of this picture. And the end result was that at this time, which was approaching, I think it was in November, so it was around Thanksgiving, and then that we were able to actually provide meals. But it really took not just a village, it took a diverse faith, it took a city of diverse faith leaders to help that happen. So, with that, I want to give you just a brief introduction to our panel this morning, who will speak in the order that I am going to introduce them, and will add to their own bios, because I will not do it justice for any of you. Justin Dyer is the professor of religious education at Brigham Young University, directly to my right here, and a fellow at the Wheatley Institute, who researches the relationship between religion and mental health, and has published extensively on this topic, and has also been cited as an expert witness in court cases and other public forum. And we'll be hearing a little bit about the relationship between those two from you today, Justin. So thank you for being here. Harris Tarrant, directly over to the right here, a colleague of mine who I've known for a long time. So it's great to see you again, Justin. You were started out and for many years were the director at the Washington chapter of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. You went for a sojourn for about 8 years to government, where you served as a senior policy advisor for the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and have, in the last year returned to private sector work as well, or the nonprofit sector. So we're so delighted that you can join us today. Harris, okay, and then directly next to Harris is Sylvie Sun, who is the board member at the Interfaith Center of New York, and also on she is a practicing Chinese Chan Buddhism since 1989, and has been a volunteer with the Dharma Drum Center in Elmhurst. And also you are, and have been for a while since I've known you, on the board of Buddhist Global Relief, where you've done amazing work there. And finally, the award winner from earlier this morning, Pastor Cara Richardson, who is the director of the New York State Office of Faith and Nonprofit Development Services, appointed by Governor Hochul to that position, a dedicated faith leader wrangler. I think that's another title that you should accept, and somebody who's worked a lot with nonprofit organizations across New York State. So with that, I want to turn it over to you, Justin, and ask you, I began by painting a rather, bleak picture, I suppose, of too often the way that religion is viewed as not contributing to social problems, and have you explain to us a little bit about your research that perhaps shows something different. So, I'm going to share.
Wonderful. Well, it is amazing to be here with everybody. This is such an esteemed group here. I'm so humbled to be part of this. I guess one more aspect of my bio: as a professor, I teach courses on religion as well as graduate statistics. And I often say that my students pray a lot more in the statistics class than they do in the religion class. But what Reverend Breyer is speaking to here is we all kind of have this sense that, in the media, religion isn't often portrayed very well, and it's often portrayed as being the problem and not necessarily a solution to the problems. So I just want to note a few things about what religion provides for human beings. And often these things come in a unique package within religion. Religion provides meaning of life, meaning in life and purpose in our lives. Right now we are suffering from a crisis of meaning. And unfortunately we see that in the dramatic rise of suicide and deaths of despair in the United States in particular. People are not finding that meaning, but also it provides us meaning in suffering. It helps our suffering become intelligible. It also provides us ways of handling the difficulties of life. It gives us eternal compensation for the losses that we experience in life. It gives us community, a sense of belonging, and systems of care. And because of these things and many more we could go over, on almost any index of well-being, religious people on average, and we all understand that, right, on average, do better. Now, here we have just a statement. I like this. This is from David DeSteno. He says, religion's value depends on the intentions, and also I should say the actions of those using it. Yes, some of the tools religion provides can be used for evil purposes, right? Religion is a structure, and as any structure, it can be used for unwell ends. But he goes on to say that is not a reason to indict the entire enterprise, especially when there's ample evidence that other items in religion's toolbox can help foster people's noblest traits. And simply given its worldwide presence, those tools that religion has can be used and employed across the globe. So I'm going to cite a few things from, this is kind of the major textbook, if you will, of religion and well-being done by the most fantastic scholars in the area. So for one area, and this is just mental health. Again, we all understand that religious people can suffer from mental health difficulties. At the same time, those who are religious, on average, have lower rates of mental health difficulties for all those reasons cited earlier. Also, religion helps us connect better as families. Religions often discuss family relationships and how do we do those family relationships well. So this bit of research found that religiously active fathers are more likely to be engaged with their children at earlier ages. Sometimes we get a vision of the authoritarian religious father who's really negative. Now, of course, that does exist, but actually on average, that's not what we see. The more religious the dad is, the more connected he is with his children. Sharing housework across 11 countries. A large study found that the more the couple valued religion, the more they shared housework. Again, that's exactly contrary to often the view we get of religious individuals. And one of the reasons I'll say that religion is so good for women is because it's particularly good for men. There is something that men gain from religion that is really important. Not to dismiss what women gain, but that often is a great help for the structure of men's lives. Well, religion and mortality. The studies show that on average, religious individuals live longer. And that's for a whole host of reasons, those community connections, but also religious people get sick less. Now, this is kind of an interesting bit of research. There's been dozens of research on, say, religion and cancer. Those who are religious, on average, have lower rates of cancer. Religious practices are often emphasize healthy living, those kinds of things, and thus people are less likely to even get cancer, and this is particularly in subgroups such as African Americans and women. Now, religion and suicide, there's actually been research done on this for over 100 years. Back in the 1890s, Emil Durkheim did the first study to look at how does religion impact rates of suicide across different countries. And what he found, and what's been found in the century since then, the 2016 International Handbook of Suicide Prevention says that research tends to support the basic premise that religion provides protection against suicide risk. And we heard that from Ryan Burge earlier, that the NONES, nuns are on the rise. And Tyler Vanderweel at Harvard calculated that nearly 40% of the increase in the suicide rate could be attributed to the decline in religious service attendance. It does make a difference. Again, tragically, even within religious communities, suicide occurs. At the same time, the religions provide such important protection against these kinds of things. Religion and good neighborliness. Robert Putnam, famous for writing Bowling Alone, wrote this book, American Grace, a bit ago, concludes that religious Americans are generally better neighbors and more active citizens. Religion network of morally freighted personal connections, morally freighted, right? You're in a congregation, you're among your fellow religious individuals, and there's this moral feeling that you have towards the support of one another. And this explains a lot of the good neighborliness that exists there. And as was alluded to earlier, religions provide a lot of social support. 63% of food pantries in the U.S. are faith-based. One study we did looked at how during COVID, people were strapped for cash. Those who are religious, the kids, were less likely to skip a meal because of COVID, because of the religious connections that they had. Well, so just to sum up, religion typically provides important, almost often essential support improving health, family life, economic conditions. Because of its worldwide presence, it's something that we can leverage in almost every location. And when we support that positive religiousness, that creates such important supports for the social problems that we face.
Great. Thank you so much. That's excellent. Harris, I think we want to start your presentation off by asking the question, how do you think that faith communities can ensure their efforts are inclusive of folks from different traditions or of no religion at all, while also remaining rooted in your spiritual identity? And I think we're going to try to do about 5 minutes for each person, so that gives us a little time for questions at the end.
Thank you, Reverend Chloe, and thank you all for joining us today. I'll start with a personal story, and then I'll talk a little bit about what about inclusivity and solving social problems and the role of religion, but also I think the role of politics in religion and the expression of religion in the public square as well, because it is part of the reality that we live in today as Americans. I am a child of refugees who came to this country in the 80s, fleeing religious persecution under the communist regime in Afghanistan, the Soviet Union's communist regime in Afghanistan. My father was a diplomat. He was stationed in 5 different countries, including Australia, England, Switzerland, Canada, and the United States. He was the educational attaché for the government of Afghanistan in Washington, D.C., and he had a strong relationship with the University of Nebraska, of all places, where they had a strong exchange program. And so my father spent quite a lot of time in the U.S. traveling the country, as he did in other countries. And so when we decided to escape persecution under the communist regime, because he was part of the resistance against the communist regime, he had a choice to where to go. He had the choice to go to England, he had a choice to go to Australia, he had a choice to go to Switzerland, and many other countries in the Middle East. But he intentionally chose to come to the United States. And I remember he used to tell us as children, I came to this country because I saw religious diversity, acceptance, and pluralism. That is the America that my father chose. I'm quite sad to say that I don't think that is the America that I live in right now. It's not, at least in the public expression of our faith communities and what social media and what toxic politics has done to our nation in many ways. But still, I believe that we as Americans are far ahead of many other countries. And I think it just requires us to go back and dig deep inside as to who we really are as to who we really are. So I have no doubt that religion and faith solves social issues, whether they're inside the home, whether they're outside of the home. Religion has a role to play. But it's the expression of religion that's the key. How do we take our private, our spiritual, and very personal expressions of religion, and how do we make them public together as a diverse, democratic society? How do I leave my mosque, and where I may sometimes hear things that might not be viable for me to express outside, how do I filter that? How do I leave my synagogue? How do I leave my church and then be able to come and be able to have a conversation in the public where we are able to express ourselves in a way that's constructive for our democratic experience? And so far, I think what has happened over the past decade is I think we've taken a more toxic expression in many of our communities, especially because of the online culture. But I think there's a lot of room for us, especially forums like these, to be able to come and say, we want to take a more positive expression, because social problems will be addressed and solved when we do have that positive expression of our faith in the public sphere. And I see the 1 minute, so I'm going to stop here.
Thank you. Harris, you just reminded me of that image that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King used of the primary faith language in his pulpit where he spoke, and then the translation of that language into the public square. Yeah. The image of the check that had bounced when he spoke from the Washington Memorial. So that bit of translation is, I think, what I hear you talking about. Sylvie, it is, maybe you could spend a moment on how, in particular, Buddhist Global Relief, where you have spent a good deal of your time and energy, how it goes about approaching systematic issues like food insecurity and gender inequality, as distinct, I think, from perhaps the notion of charity, which is an important and also direct role that faith traditions often play in.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm super, super grateful and honored. Buddhist Global Relief addresses systemic issue by buying direct food aids and long-term development projects. BGR's work is based on core Buddhist principle, and our organization applies Buddhist teachings such as compassion, interdependence, and the removal of the root causes of suffering, all to take action on contemporary global problems. The Buddha taught that giving food is one of the most important and beneficiary practice of generosity. He said that giving food to those in need is a way to accumulate merit or positive karma, which will lead to happiness and well-being in this life and the next. He also said that giving food is a way to cultivate compassion and kindness, which are essential qualities for anyone who wants to live in a happy and fulfilled life. Our mission is focused on the following 4 areas. First, provide food assistance to people affected by hunger and malnutrition. Second, help to develop better long-term methods of sustainable food production and management appropriate to the cultures and tradition of the beneficiaries. The third one is promote the education of youth, and particularly of girls and women, which is essential in the struggle against poverty and malnutrition. The fourth one give women an opportunity to start right livelihoods. Right livelihood projects to support their family, eventually to their community. Following is I will go back later. And, oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. All right, could you read the next question?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
number-
no, of course. You were on a roll, but I will ask you another question about
Yeah, sorry.
about the how faith-based nonprofits that face burnout from doing this work, including funding uncertainty, shrinking volunteer bases. What strategies have helped you in staying resilient and mission focused? Because I think this is something that all of our organizations can learn from.
Yes, I'm happy to offer our experience. At BGR, our work stay focused on the Buddha's teaching of conscientious compassion. Our core principles, such as compassion and interdependence, are direct incorporated into our operational and fundraising models. Our primary strategy focuses on tackling the root causes of suffering. We focus on long-term justice programs, such as sustainable agriculture and women's empowerment, rather than just short-term charity. This clear long-term focus provides a deeper sense of purpose for our staff and volunteers. BGR operates as an all-volunteer organization, from its leadership to its administrative staff. This greatly reduces overhead costs, allowing a very high percentage of every dollar raised to go directly to program service. This fiscal efficiency and transparency are highly appealing to donors, providing a resilient and consistent funding base. BGR partner with small and local grassroots organizations that are already working in the community they serve. This collaborative structure ensures that our efforts are culturally appropriate, effective, and maximize the impact of limited resources. BGR main fundraising events like Walk to Feed the Hungry gatherings, empower local chapters and individual supporters to organize events in their own community. This approach turns supporters into active fundraisers and volunteers, giving them a sense of ownership and personal engagement that will continue growing our network. Okay, 1 minute, perfect.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Sylvie. And then,
Okay,
yeah.
maybe just,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay.
Just 1 minute, let me explain how our project. Usually we do funding annual project or multi-years project. It keep renewing, so a lot of project, one project can close 3/4 of our mission. So this is a picture I love in Haiti. The partner we have is Treat That Feeds Foundation. So we provide in Haiti, Jamaica, Uganda, especially starting in Haiti, the children's, school children's, family will send them to school because that they provide breakfast, lunch, and after-school snack. All these are based on the breadfruit feeds that the children started seeding, and then they are bringing the baby trees, planting around their schoolyard, and they harvest the fruit, breadfruit, and everything is, they can receive their education, meals, and also environmentally good to our earth. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think if you want, people can ask you afterwards a little bit more about it if
Oh,
they
yeah,
want some more
yeah,
specifics.
definitely.
So, Cara, thank you so much. You have an interesting bird's eye view in some ways from a government space of the ways that religious traditions and communities, houses of faith can work together or not. And I would hope that perhaps you could spend a little bit sharing your experience on what works from when you, as you see from your perspective. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Breyer. And from what we see on a governmental side is what we seek to do is scale impact when we combine the proximity of faith communities with the scaffolding of government. What we come to understand is that our faith communities understand their faith really well, but they don't understand how government works. So what we seek to do is we knit together our pastors, our imams, our rabbis, our lamas, our nonprofit directors, and our agency leaders to have those hard conversations with how to navigate through the governmental space. And what we've sought to do here in New York State specifically is, as the one and only Reverend Dr. A.R. Bernard would say, is create a one-of-a-kind model. And what that does is we build together a coalition building through our Interfaith Council and our faith-based gatherings. We capacity build by providing the resources to go into interfaith dialogue, but also into interagency collaboration to give people more practical knowledge and model with how to interact with government. Our capacity allows us to help us with the smallest of faith-based organizations that only have maybe 5 members to the largest that have maybe 5,000 members, when they're able to partner with other leaders who have already worked the system, who already know how it goes, and to also have the connections to the government agencies to be able to build those bridges. And so what we seek to do and what we find ourselves doing is building out based on those conversations, those funding opportunities. Going to our other agencies and having the hard conversations about the nonprofit leader who complains about mistrust. Going to our governor and talking and discussing so that she builds the bridge to find the ways in which we can take down the red tape, where that red tape doesn't exist, where people don't wait months and months and months to get their funding and to be helped and supported, but they can have a pathway forward much quicker. And so what we've found in the Office of Nonprofit Development Services is that our organizations are getting funding way quicker. We put out one RFP this year, and we've already seen over 40 institutions get their funding because we worked with them through the vouchers, we worked with them through the systems, and when you're able to partner with government, you can help the programs that you already want to do move just a little bit faster.
And you shared that example with the city of New York, right? About funding nonprofits. Okay, so we have about 7 minutes, and so let's take a couple of questions. If you have a question for anyone on the panel or generally, if you wouldn't mind identifying yourself and also just posing it really as a quick question, that would be awesome. And just raise your hand if you're interested.
All right, I have a question for you. Are you getting other states reaching out to ask about your model?
So we have found that some states are reaching out about our model, and some states reach out through our New York State Interfaith Council, which is chaired by Reverend Bernard, but also states have reached out directly on the government side. And so we do have states bordering us, I'm not going to say them, but who are very interested in our model and have taken it to their governors to see if it can actually be implemented where they are.
Any other questions?
Just
Yes.
a comment. I heard about this forum through the email that came from the organization, and I was like, I've got to get there. So, bravo.
Thank you.
Right, because that does point to a very important role the government can play that the other faith communities don't have the capacity, and that is to provide reliable and accessible communication in, across the board. So that's a great point. Any other questions? Yes, Ruth Messenger.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank Chloe. I'm the co-chair of the board. And I want to thank the panel for really the great examples they've all provided. Cara, I have a question which I want to ask in as neutral a way as possible. I'm wondering whether your office is authorized or will be authorized to work with faith groups when we face government decisions that require organized advocacy. I think it doesn't matter what side anybody's on. The easiest issue is we're about to be hit with huge budget cuts across the country. I know that elected officials, which I used to be, will be fighting back, but it seems to me that it's an opportunity to organize faith communities in the state of New York to have a voice in demanding the restoration of federal money.
So what we do in our office is built into two different components, our programs and initiatives as well as our grants team. And our programs and initiatives team actually does take that time. If there is an issue that is being raised amongst the faith community and you do reach out to our office, we do take all of that information and put that into a spreadsheet and then share that with our governor so that our governor is able to hear the pros and the cons of all policy issues and being able to see exactly how many faith leaders are actually interested in that particular policy. How many people is that bothering? So during the time where we understand that there was a heavy weight of ICE, and there still currently is, and people being very, very afraid for refugees and migrants. And so our faith-based leaders, as they would call in, we would make sure that our governor directly heard that information to find out who our faith-based leaders were that were very, very interested in that, how many people wanted to help, and if there could be ways in the future that we could partner.
Time for one more. Yes.
Direct this question to Harris, and I'd actually draw upon.
Can you just identify yourself
Oh,
as
my
well?
apologies.
No, that's all right.
Monsignor James Kopp. I'm from Albany, New York, in the shadow of the Empire Plaza. Question for you, drawing on your own personal experience as a refugee coming from Afghanistan. I would like, and this is a general statement, but I think it's arguably true. I would like to hear your general thoughts on the lack of response within organized religion to what we're currently seeing with people being black bagged on the streets. 20 million people are going to be disenrolled. And we can all say, well, we're not doing anything. I worked in Selma for 3 years. I know what direct that. We're not. We're groundhogging. We're afraid. We're holding on to our person. What are your thoughts? This is a safe space, I think, relatively. You say,
You're making me get political here.
yeah. I mean, everybody's talking about we're solving problems. Is it
Yeah.
a big elephant in the room that we're all walking around looking at it saying, well,
And I think, so my point about private expression that translates into a public expression of faith, I think this is where coming together, faith communities coming together is really important. Listen, the raids that are happening, the ICE raids that are happening, are not just happening in Chicago, LA, and New York City. They're also happening in the South. They're happening in places where now construction workers are not showing up, so housing is being impacted. Building of homes are being impacted in places like Texas and in Oklahoma and in other states. And so we were just in a meeting with Senator Mitch McConnell about this specifically. These issues are going to impact everyone. And so I think that's where responsible faith leaders coming together and saying, we have to put the politics of this aside and see this through a human lens, how it impacts us as Americans, as human beings. And I think that's where the disconnect of our toxic politics these days and the real journey of Americans on a daily basis, there's a disconnect there. The toxic politics is leading the human experience is not leading. And I think that's where all of our faith communities can come together to say, we should be humans first in this conversation. Our human experience needs to be leading the conversation. And that's how we drown out all the toxicity of the national political conversation. I think that's where we need to focus on. And I hope, regardless of where which ideological position we come from, if our religious and our faith leaders can put the human experience first, I think we will start to change things a little bit.
Well, with that, and Harris, I would just add that as faith leaders, we also have a grasp on history. And sometimes it's easier to see in history things that we miss in front of our lived experience. And I just recall hearing the survivor of one of the internment camps on the radio the other day, talking about how what was happening in the news now was reminding her, bringing back memories she had not thought about for years. So I think we are aware also of the power of what happens in the past to shape the future. So with that, I want to thank you all so much, thank our incredible panel, thank all of you, and to encourage you to go to lunch, where you will hear at one point, I think I saw Dad arrive. Oh, there he is. Look, he's on. This is lunch. This is lunch. So stick around for lunch.
One more thing, Reverend.
Oh, there's one more thing. Yes. Oh, right. Okay. Oh.
Hello, my name is Dr. Cynthia Atkins. I am a pastor as well. But on this morning, I'm rising to present this award and honor to Reverend Dr. Chloe Breyer, a faith. She has a long bio, but I'm going to give my little synopsis of it. A faith-empowered, active advocate for social justice, serving over 2 decades as an Episcopal priest in the Diocese of New York at Harlem Churches. Author of The Close, a young woman's first year at seminary. She's been serving, she's been praying, and she's been giving with God as her guide. Again, a round of applause for Reverend Dr. Chloe Breyer.
Thank you so much. This is a real treat. So thank you. And to Dave Marriott, who should also be here, whose idea, we are part of the brainstorm in terms of his idea here. So thank you, and thanks everyone for the Interfaith Center.